Trump is a criminal. And the criminals like to be around other criminals.
And a mob boss.
Yeah, yeah. Bannon is right. We are flooded in shit, and we are searching for a way to deal with this. These are extraordinarily difficult times.
Hey, James, I think it's fair to say that we warned what a Trump administration would be like. We were not naive. It would be much more effective and dangerous than Trump 1.0, populated with loyal sycophants. We cited the terrific New York Times stories by the great Maggie Haberman and Charlie Savage and others outlining Trump 2.0. You know something, James? It's worse. It's worse than we said. It's more lethal than we imagined. The appointments, the policies, the total disdain for the rule of law, the grifting, and beyond the grifting, Elon Musk is making a fortune. He's making a fortune with his co-presidency. The New York Times piece on Tuesday by Eric Lipton and Kirsten Grind. He is dismantling agencies and regulators that are in charge of 32 investigations or enforcement actions against companies that he owns. No conflict of interest there, right? Or take the pardons. A Tennessee congressman, a former Nebraska Republican congressman, Republicans, no consultation with prosecutors. And New York's Mayor Adams, the nefarious mayor of New York City, under indictment. What they did is they basically suspended the indictment with the ability to bring it back again. And they said they did it so he could carry out Trump's policies on immigration. I've never heard of a pardon given for that reason. They own Eric Adams now for the next 10 months. And I say 10 months because I'm confident he will never be reelected. He's been a terrible mayor. And the guy did this, Emil Bove, who was, I guess, the number 3 guy at Justice. James, look at him. He looks like Roy Cohn. He really does look like Roy Cohn. He's probably not as smart, but maybe he has the same ethics. So far, the courts are a bulwark. But what happens when he tells the court to go put it where the sun don't shine? I don't know. Will congressional Republicans finally stand up? I doubt it. They are determined to intimidate, and they do it in such a sleazy way. This week, Elon Musk tweeted out a Laura Loomer post with a picture and address of the daughter of one of the judges who issued a restraining order against one of Trump's illegal orders. In other words, namely, here's the daughter. Go give her a hard time. You know, Steve Bannon said, flood the zone with all kinds of shit, and the press is incapable of keeping up. Maybe he's right.
Yeah. First of all, don't forget Rod McGovern. Trump is a criminal. And the criminals like to be around other criminals.
And a mob boss.
Yeah. Yeah. Bannon is right. We are flooded in shit. And we are searching for a way to deal with this. These are extraordinarily difficult times. And he just keeps moving with one stupid thing after another. Tom Friedman, who said today that, of course, state the obvious, the Gaza proposal is the dumbest thing an American president has ever come up with in the Middle East. Of course, 100% true. Thank you. Panama Canal, Greenland. My favorite is but the country of my great-grandfather's birth, and I've been to the house he grew up in, Copenhagen, is now saying they're going to buy California. And I'm telling the Danes, I'll chip in.
No, James, wait a minute. How about giving them, I don't know, Idaho? Some other place.
I mean, the point is, we have these conversations. We talk to people on the phone. We go to cocktail parties and dinners, and we have things. When you sit back and see, when you take it one by one, it's so much crazier than you can imagine that we're having this discussion. And one of the dangers that we have is we just become like it just becomes elevator music or something.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you accentuate. Do you oppose one thing? Do you oppose all five? Is it a personnel issue? Is it a policy issue? I maybe some of our well, I'm struggling here a little bit, so maybe some of our really smart viewers can help us untangle a little bit. It's really tangled now because it's no one knows where to land. It's all too incomprehensible.
Yeah, it is. And I think, what Bannon said was that the press can never keep up. And I think some of the press, the New York Times, some of even the downsized Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal broke that terrific story about the Musk aid. But I think there needs to be more effort. The Bulwark does great work on that too. I really do believe that there needs to be more oppositional institutions set up. The lawyers are doing okay, but there's so many things. Let me give you an example. We focus on the top tier and how bad Patel and Bobby Kennedy and Hegseth and Gabbard are. But where do you see the second, third, and fourth? I mean, just a couple examples. The spokesman at the Defense Department is going to be Sean Parnell. He was a Pennsylvania congressional and Senate candidate who had to drop out because in a custody battle, the judge said his wife was right. He had assaulted her and gave custody of their children to her. I mean, that's now the top spokesman at the Pentagon. I guess he'll probably bond well with Hegseth. And Darren Beatty is the Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy. He was fired from the first administration for associating with white nationalists. That's a calling card now. Joe Kent has been named the head of the National Terrorism Center. He also was an unsuccessful candidate who associated with white nationalists and said January 6th prisoners were political prisoners and that he called for defunding the FBI. This is the head of the Terrorism Center. And finally, Marco, what's his name? Alex or whatever it is, Musk trooper was initially fired for bragging he was a racist before it was cool. I was cool before it was cool to call someone a racist. Then he was reinstated, and Musk criticized the Wall Street Journal reporter who broke the story. You know, James, they're going to be a lot more like this. A lot more like this.
Just remember, Trump had dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Nick Fuentes and Yee. Okay? There's nothing. It's like we say, well, you're right to point out the Deputy Secretary for Public Affairs or the this or that, the tentacles of this go right down. The tentacles start at the top. When the former president of the United States and current president of the United States invites Nick Fuentes to dinner, is there anything that you can say? And I don't know, he's maybe a talented musician. I don't think anybody would say he's a model of sanity in the United States. Again, we're getting overwhelmed. And things that we thought that would kill a political career, that would be poisonous for whatever reason, this guy keeps trugging along.
Yeah, and that's why I think there have to be opposition organizations that step up. I mean, not Democratic Party organizations, but more bulwarks, more groups like this, because there is so much stuff going on. I will say that I think it's possible that they may have peaked in February. The polling numbers, everyone talked about the CBS poll with 53%. And how good that was. Most of the others, Marquette, The Economist, Pew, all having 47 or 48. That's not terrific for a new president. And I think that some of his executive actions are not only being stifled in the courts, but are probably unpopular with some of the public. And in the next week or two, James, the budget and tax issues are going to be joined. And there are lots of vulnerabilities. Just look at the congressional Republicans. The House Republican leadership and the Senate Republican leadership and the Conservative Freedom Caucus in the House all have different approaches on the budget and reconciliation. And they're going to be very hard to reconcile them. And when they do, they're going to end up giving a lot of tax cuts to the rich. They're going to try to have a fig leaf or two, which hides it. And they're going to cut a lot of stuff for working class people, Medicaid, and they're going after the lower drug prices. So I think that the first month is the easiest for him. I think it's going to become much harder now.
Well, okay, so I will talk first about the CBS poll. Yesterday, a friend of mine, when I was sitting here, I left the TV on MSNBC and I got a call. They could not stop citing the CBS poll. I don't know why MSNBC they cherry pick it, all right? Because that I don't know, outlier people say, but that certainly is on more than just a little bit on the high side of Trump approval. But for some reason or another, the powers to be at MSNBC think we should talk about this poll and this poll exclusively. I'd love to know the rationale they're thinking.
I would too.
I don't know it, and I'm going to ask you about this. That I think when do they have to vote on the debt extension, and just tell people very briefly what this is and what are the consequences of this vote?
Well, what they did is they extended the debt ceiling over the opposition of some conservative Republicans. Trump wants to do away with it. He's actually right about that, but it's not going to happen. And at some, it's always difficult because the Treasury can do all kinds of games. But at some point in the next month or so, they have got to increase the debt ceiling or we run out of money. And if they don't, we're going to have to default. And that's going to be one hell of a fight because the right-wingers in the House are going to say, we only will go along with this if you do make these kinds of actions and cuts that a few moderate Republicans and all the Democrats won't go along with. I mean, the one thing is he's not going to get any Democratic votes on this stuff. So it's going to be a really hard time the next month or two, James.
Now, is the majority down to one because Hochul is not calling the Stefanik seat till November?
Yeah, that's uncertain when she'll have that. There's talk about that. But right now, when they will elect currently, it is what, 218 to 215, I believe. And when what's her name, Stefanik resigns, if she does go to the UN, it's 217. But Florida's going to elect two Republicans probably in April. So that'll take us to 219 to 215. But that means they can only lose one vote until that New York seat is filled. And even when that's filled, they can only lose two votes. And yeah, people talk about some of the moderates. I don't know who they are. But the real threat may come from the right wing because they don't care.
They got Tom Massey and Chip Roy and that ilk to deal with. I mean, and of course, you can fool all of the people some of the time, but some of the people all of the time. You can't fool the bond market none of the time.
Right.
And God damn it, they're powerful. Whew. They're going to pull something out here. It seemed to me.
Well, at some point, it's gonna come to hit them. I don't know when. I don't know if it'll be. My friend Roger Altman says he's not sure. Could be this year. Could be next year. Could be this summer. But at some point, it's going to hit them. And when it hits them, man, look out.
By the way, inflation, so Trump said he'd get it down from day one. Well, okay. We're way past day one.
Well, first target he's missed, right? Of course, now he'll blame it on Biden.
Yeah, of course.
Anyway, but tough times ahead. All right, great.